Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are opening a file that, quite frankly, shouldn't even exist.
Really shouldn't.
We're setting our sights on a civilization that was a genuine superpower. I mean,
Right.
on par with ancient Egypt, with Babylon, an empire that actually sacked the city of Babylon.
Fought the pharaohs to a standstill at Kadesh, yeah?
They invented the iron weaponry that literally changed the world, and then...
Poof. Gone.
And I don't mean it declined slowly, like Rome sort of fading into a new era. I mean, it was effectively deleted from human memory for two millennia.
It's one of the greatest ghost stories in the history of archaeology, genuinely. For centuries, the only proof we had that these people ever walked the earth were a few vaguely hostile footnotes in the Hebrew Bible.
The sons of Heth.
The sons of Heth, exactly. We know them today as the Hittites. But until, about 100 years ago, they were just a rumor, a shadow in the margins of someone else's story.
But today, and this is thanks to some incredible archaeology and some linguistic detective work that we are definitely going to get into, we're not just looking at who they were, we're looking at their mind, and specifically at their absolutely wild strategy for managing reality, because this is a deep dive into mythology, yes, but it's not just a collection of fairy tales. This is a look at a whole worldview.
Exactly. We're looking at the concept they had of the land of the thousand gods. And that's not just some poetic nickname they came up with.
Yeah.
It was a literal description of their theological foreign policy.
Okay, so settle in. We're going to unpack how a culture manages 1,000 different bosses, how they turned religion into a massive legal bureaucracy.
Oh, it was.
And how they told stories about stone monsters and dragon slayers that are, the direct ancestors of the myths we still watch in movies today. This is the story of the Hittites.
It's a journey into what I like to call theological internationalism.
Theological internationalism. Okay, that is a heavy phrase to start with, but I love it. Let's break that down. Yeah. Usually when we think of ancient empires, say, the Assyrians or the Egyptians, the playbook is pretty standard, isn't it? It's I conquer you, I smash your idols, I put up a statue of my guy, and you start paying taxes.
Right. It's the my dad can beat up your dad school of foreign policy. And that was absolutely the norm for the Bronze Age. If my army won the battle, it meant my God was stronger than your God.
Therefore, your God is useless.
Therefore, your God is useless. Discard him. Burn the temple. End of story.
But the Hittites, who were centered in what's now the rocky Anatolian Plateau in Turkey, they did the exact opposite.
They were collectors.
They were strategic hoarders of divinity. It's the best way to put it. When the Hittite armies expanded, and they expanded rapidly between, say, 1650 and 1180 BC, moving down to Syria and the Levant, they would conquer a city, but they wouldn't smash the local pantheon. No. They would pack up the statues very carefully, bring them back to their capital, Hattusa, and build them a house.
A house. Like a temple. A new home. They would explicitly invite the gods of the conquered people to join the Hittite team.
Okay, but why? Was this just benevolence? We want everyone to feel welcome? Because the Bronze Age isn't exactly known for its, inclusivity or its HR policies.
No, absolutely not. It wasn't benevolence. It was a cold, hard legal strategy.
Yeah.
You have to remember, in this time period, law and religion are not separate spheres. They're the same thing.
Right.
A treaty isn't binding because a lawyer signed it or because there's a court system to enforce it. It's binding because the gods witnessed it.
Right, you swear an oath. I swear on the Bible, or I swear by Zeus, that kind of thing.
Exactly. So now imagine I conquer your city. I force you to swear loyalty to me on the name of my god, the storm god of Hattusa.
Okay.
You might do it to save your skin, but secretly, you don't care. You don't fear my god. You fear your god, the god who lives on the mountain behind your house.
So the moment your army leaves town, I might just break that treaty, because I don't think your god has any jurisdiction over me. I'm playing by my own home rules.
Precisely. But what if I bring your god to my capital, treat him to dinner, give him a nice temple, and then make you swear the treaty in the presence of my god, AD&E, your god?
Now you're in a bind.
Now you're in bind. You can't hide. You can't claim your god didn't see you break the promise. He's right there, living down the street from my god.
It's like a cosmic shield.
That is exactly how they viewed it. In the surviving treaties, and we have dozens of them, these massive clay tablets, the list of divine witnesses is exhaustive. It's not just a formality at the end.
It's the main event.
It's pages long. The storm god of the sky, the sun goddess of the earth, the mountains, the rivers, the clouds, the winds, the gods of the groom, the gods of the bride. They invoke every possible power in the universe to witness the deal.
The logic being, The more witnesses, the stronger the contract.
The more gods witness this, the harder it is to break. It's like getting a document notarized, but the notary is a literal army of divine beings who will strike you down with lightning if you lie.
So this turns the capital city, Hattusa, into this swirling vortex of spiritual energy. You've got thousands of deities, all from different places, all requiring temples, all requiring food, all requiring their own specific festivals.
It must have been an administrative nightmare.
And sitting right in the middle of this divine metropolis is the king.
The Labarna.
The Labarna. And he's not just a general or a ruler. He is the pivot point. He's the guy spinning all these plates.
He's the high priest of every single one of those cults.
So if he drops one, if he forgets to feed the storm god of Zippalanda because he was too busy fighting the Egyptians,
the whole system could crash. The god gets angry, the god withdraws his favor, and suddenly your kingdom is vulnerable.
It sets the stage for a civilization that feels incredibly high stakes. They were constantly managing what feels like a nuclear reactor of spiritual energy.
You can feel the anxiety in their texts. They lived in a state of high alert, believing that if they missed one memo, one ritual, the sun might not rise or the plague would come.
Okay, before we get into the mechanics of that anxiety and the absolute monsters it spawned, we need to address the ghost aspect you mentioned.
Right.
Because for a long time, we didn't know any of this. We didn't know the Labarna existed. We didn't know about the 1,000 gods. How do we go from a few throwaway lines in the Bible to knowing what these people ate for breakfast?
This is one of the great linguistic detective stories of the 20th century.
Yeah.
It really is. It all centers on a Czechoslovakian linguist named Bedřich Hrozný.
Yeah.
And the year is 1915.
So really recently, in the grand scheme of archaeology, this isn't some Victorian-era dig. This is World War I.
Very recent. Archaeologists have been digging in central Turkey at a site called Boğazköy, which we now know as the capital, Hattusa, and they found thousands upon thousands of clay tablets.
Okay.
They were written in cuneiform. Now, cuneiform is the writing system of Mesopotamia, the little wedges pressed into clay. So scholars could read the phonetic sounds because they knew cuneiform from reading Akkadian and Sumerian.
Okay, let me see if I've got this right. It's like if I, an English speaker, picked up a book written in, say, Vietnamese, I know the Latin alphabet, so I can sound out the words, I can read the letters, but I have absolutely no idea what I'm actually saying.
That is the perfect analogy. They could pronounce the gibberish, but it was just gibberish. It was a total mystery language for years.
So Hrozný is looking at these tablets.
He's poring over them during the First World War, sitting in Vienna, and he finds one particular sentence that it changes everything.
Set the scene for us. What does he see?
He sees a sentence where he recognizes one single symbol. It was a sumerogram. You see, sometimes the Hittite scribes would use a standard Sumerian symbol for a common object, almost like an emoji that everyone in the ancient world understood.
A universal symbol.
Yes, and the symbol was Ninda, and scholars knew Ninda meant bread.
Okay, so we have bread. That's a start. Everyone eats bread. It's a good clue.
It's a foothold. Following the symbol for bread was the word Itzateni. Now, Hrozný is a linguist. He speaks many languages. And he looks at Itzateni and he thinks, that sounds an awful lot like the German word essen, which means to eat, or Old English, etan.
Bread, eat. Okay, I'm with you. But that could be a coincidence, maybe?
That's what he thought. It's a stretch. But then he looks at the next part of the sentence. Watarma, ekuteni.
What?
He sees water. And he thinks, wait a minute, water? It sounds exactly like the English water or the German Wasser.
No way.
And the last word, ekuteni. That look a lot like the Latin word aqua for water, or even related to drink.
Eat bread, drink water.
The full sentence was, Nu ninda and etzateni waterma ekuteni. Now you will eat bread and then you will drink water.
That's almost too perfect. Water is water. It's practically English.
It was a bombshell, a complete bombshell. In that moment, Hrozný realized that this mysterious, lost Middle Eastern empire, they weren't speaking a Semitic language like the Babylonians or the Hebrews.
Right.
They weren't speaking an isolated language like the Egyptians or the Sumerians. They were speaking an Indo-European language.
Which means
they were linguistic cousins to the Greeks, the Romans, the Persians, the Germans, and us. In the middle of a region dominated by totally different language families, you have this massive superpower speaking a distant, ancient relative of English.
that just completely rewrites the map of the ancient world. I mean, usually when we learn about Western civilization, the story starts with the Greeks, right? Maybe we give a little nod to Mesopotamia for inventing the wheel and writing.
Sure.
But this suggests there's a huge missing branch of the family tree sitting right there in Turkey.
Precisely. And this discovery leads to what we now call the Anatolian hypothesis. The idea is that the ancestors of the Hittites split off from the main Proto-Indo-European family tree very, very early. We're talking something like 4400 to 4100 BC.
So they're the big brother.
They're the eldest sibling who left the house before the other kids. Greek, Latin, Sanskrit, were even born. And because they left so early, their language is a kind of time capsule.
How so?
It preserves features that everyone else lost over the millennia. For example, Hittite has these sounds called laryngeals, these heavy guttural H sounds that linguists had theorized must have existed in the parent language, but they had disappeared in almost every other known daughter language.
And the Hittites still had them.
The Hittites still had them. It was like finding a living dinosaur. When we study Hittite, we are looking into the deepest, most traceable past of our own speech.
But this creates a kind of paradox, doesn't it? You have an elite class, the kings, the scribes, the aristocracy, speaking this Indo-European language, but they're ruling over a population in central Turkey, the Hattians, who've been there for thousands of years, and speak a totally different non-Indo-European language.
And that hybrid nature is the key to understanding everything about them. They didn't just replace the locals, they absorbed them. Recent DNA studies have backed this up. Genetically, the population was overwhelmingly local Anatolian.
So the language didn't come with a huge wave of migration?
It seems it was an elite transfer. But culturally, it was a mashup, a synthesis. They took their Indo-European sky gods concepts like Su, which is the root of Zeus, or Deus in Latin, and they mixed them with the indigenous nature spirits of the land they now ruled.
It's like putting a cowboy hat on a sphinx.
Or worshiping Zeus in a temple that was originally designed for a local storm demon. This hybrid identity creates a tension, a constant tension between the... It absolutely does. The Kumarbi cycle is our main source for how the Hittites believe the universe was structured. It's also called the Song of Going Forth, or more simply, Kingship in Heaven.
So let's dive into it. How does the world begin for the Hittites? Who's running the show at the start?
It begins with a succession crisis. In the very beginning, you have a primordial god named Allalu. He's the king in heaven. He sits on the throne, and standing before him, serving him his cup, is the mighty sky god Anu.
The sky god is the butler.
For 9 years, yes. The text is very specific. This sets up a rigid hierarchy. The king sits, and the servant stands and serves. But after 9 years, Anu decides he's had enough of this. He rebels, he fights Allalu, defeats him, and Allalu flees down to the dark earth, which is their name for the underworld.
Okay, so Allalu is banished to the basement. Anu is now the king of heaven. New boss, same as the old boss.
Right, and for another 9 years, Anu rules. And now he needs a cupbearer. So who serves him? A god named Kumarbi.
Let me guess, this isn't going to end well.
Well, Kumarbi is the grain god. And crucially, he is the son of the exiled Allalu. So you have this generational grudge match building up right from the start. The son of the banished king is now serving the usurper.
It's basically Hamlet in space.
With more biting. After 9 years, just like clockwork, Kumarbi rebels against Anu. They fight. Anu gets scared. He tries to escape. He flies up into the sky like a bird. But Kumarbi is faster. He chases him, grabs Anu by the feet, pulls him down from the sky, and bites off his genitals.
We went there. Okay.
We went there. It is a pivotal, grotesque moment. And Kumarbi doesn't just bite them off, he swallows them. He swallows the manhood of the sky god to steal his power.
Now, in most stories, that would be the end, right? The bad guy wins. He's literally consumed the power of his enemy. But the Hittites have a twist.
A very, very weird twist.
Yeah.
While Kumarbi is gloating, having just castrated his enemy, Anu, who is now bleeding and defeated, starts laughing at him. Laughing. He says, "Don't rejoice. You think you've won, but you have swallowed my manhood, and you have also swallowed my seed. I have planted 3 terrible gods inside your belly."
Wait, by biting him, he got pregnant.
Exactly. It's this incredible motif of displacement. Kumarbi wanted to steal Anu's power, his potency, his manhood, but in doing so, he became the unwilling vessel for it. He is now pregnant with the next generation of gods, including the greatest of them all, the storm god, Teshub.
That is horrifying, but also in a very weird way, completely logical. It explains why the storm god is so powerful. He is physically made of the sky god's essence, incubated inside the earthly grain god.
It perfectly synthesizes the two worlds we talked about. The storm god, Teshub, is eventually born from Kumarbi. The texts are a bit fragmented here, but they suggest a kind of violent, cesarean-like splitting of Kumarbi's skull or body to let the new gods out. It's not a gentle birth.
And then Teshub overthrows Kumarbi to become the king of the gods.
And then Teshub overthrows his father. Womb. Gets complicated. But yes, he becomes the new king. So the cycle is Alalu is overthrown by Anu, Anu is overthrown by Kumarbi, and Kumarbi is overthrown by his son Teshub.
And if this is sounding familiar to anyone listening who, had to read Greek mythology in high school.
It should sound very familiar.
It's the exact same story as Uranus, Kronos, and Zeus. Kronos castrates his father Uranus, and then Zeus overthrows his father Kronos.
It is almost a one-for-one parallel. Hesiod's Theogony, which is the foundational text for all of Greek mythology, is essentially a cover version of this much older Hittite story.
Wow.
The Greeks almost certainly got this narrative from the Hittites or their cultural neighbors in the Levant. We used to think the Greeks invented these grand, violent, cosmic dramas, but the Hittites were writing them down centuries earlier.
So Teshub is the Zeus figure, the king of the gods. But before he can properly rule, the universe has to be physically built. And there's a fascinating detail in another one of their myths, the Song of Ulikumi, about how the physical world was actually formed. It mentions a specific tool.
Yes, the copper cutter.
A copper cutter. Not a magic wand, not a divine word, a tool.
A tool. The myth explains that in the distant past, heaven and earth were one big, fused entity. They were stuck together. And to create space for life to exist, the ancient primordial gods used a copper cutter, or a cleaver, to literally saw them apart.
It's so industrial. It's not a magic spell. It's a cosmic construction project.
And the text says this ancient cutter has been stored in the warehouse of the ancient gods ever since. This act of cutting is what created the tripartite universe the Hittites lived in. The sky above, ruled by the new gods like Teshub, the earth, where humans live, and the underworld, the dark earth below.
And the underworld is where the losers of that cosmic battle go.
Yes. They become the former gods. The Kerulis Inuns. This is a crucial concept in their religion. Gods like Alalu, the very first king, are banished down there. They are sealed behind heavy copper gates. But the Hittites were always terrified that they might come back.
That is a very ominous thought to have just sitting in the back of your mind. We worship our shiny new gods, but the old, angry, primordial gods are just downstairs in the basement waiting for the lock to break.
It creates a baseline of anxiety that runs through their entire religion. For the Hittites, the order of the universe is not permanent. It's not a given. It is maintained by force, by vigilance, and by constant ritual.
So let's look at that order. You mentioned earlier that the Hittites treated their religion like a giant bureaucracy. If Teshub is the king, or the CEO, how is the rest of the divine administration organized?
It really was an imperial administration in the truest sense. The pantheon wasn't a family soap opera like the Greek gods on Olympus, where everyone is sleeping with everyone and playing pranks. The Hittite gods had job descriptions. They had ranks. They were fed meals on a strict schedule. They were housed in temples that functioned like government ministries. Everything was accounted for.
Who's in the C-suite with Teshub? Who are the other top executives?
At the very top, we have what scholars call the imperial dyad. It's a pair. You have the storm god. His Hittite name is Tarhuna. Teshub is the Hurrian name they adopted. And his wife, the sun goddess of Arena.
Okay, now stop there for a second. That's really interesting. Usually in ancient cultures, the sun is a guy. Right? Apollo, Ra, Shamash. The sun is seen as the primary masculine force. But here, the sun is female.
Yes, and she is immensely powerful. She is the queen of all lands. While the storm god handles the executive function and, the weather, the battles, the brute force, the sun goddess is the supreme patron of the state. She is the ultimate judge. She decides right and wrong.
So it's not a patriarchal system.
Not at the top, no. It contrasts sharply with the later systems of the Romans or even the Greeks. It's much more balanced. Storm and sun, male and female, action and justice.
And this was reflected in their society.
It was. The Hittite queens, who held the title of Tawanana, were not just the king's wives. They were high priestesses with independent religious authority. They held the keys to the cult of the sun goddess. And, get this, even after the king died, the queen kept her position and power. The new king couldn't just get rid of her.
That's a very distinct power structure. So you have the storm and the sun at the top. Who's in middle management?
That would be the llama.
Rama, like the fluffy South American animal.
No, though, that would be delightful. Lama. It's a sumergram that stands for protective deity. And these were everywhere. Every city had its own llama. Every gate in the city wall had one. Even the king had a personal llama who was like his divine bodyguard.
And what were these? What did they look like? Were they big statues of warriors?
That's what's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Sometimes they were, but often they were abstract symbols.
Abstract how?
Well, a great example is something called a cursa.
A curse?
A cursa is basically a sacred hunting bag. It's a fleece bag, maybe filled with symbols of abundance like fat or grain, and it would be hung on a sacred iron tree. And that was the god, or at least the primary vessel for the god's power.
So you walk up to a temple, you're expecting to see a giant statue of a dude with a beard, and instead you see a tote bag hanging from a tree.
A very, very sacred tote bag. But to them, it was incredibly potent. If you neglected the llama of your city, if you didn't anoint the cursa with oil or offer it bread, the physical walls of your city might still be standing, but the spiritual defense would crumble.
And if the spiritual defense crumbles?
The enemy armies will find a way in. It reinforces that idea that the physical world is just a shell, a reflection of the more important spiritual world.
Let's double-click on the big guy, Teshub or Tarhuna. He's the CEO. What's his vibe? What's on his business card?
He is the dynamic executive force. Remember, he's born from the sky god and the grain god, so he synthesizes that celestial power with terrestrial fertility. Iconographically, he's a warrior. Always. He wields a mace and a thunderbolt. He's often shown standing on two mountain gods to show his dominion over the earth.
Very cool.
And he drives a chariot pulled by two sacred bulls.
Do the bulls have names? They have to have names.
They do. Their names are Seri and Hari, which roughly translate to day and night.
That is undeniably cool, driving a chariot pulled by time itself.
It shows his cosmic dominion. But here's where the thousand gods idea comes back in. Teshub wasn't the monolith. He wasn't just the storm god. No, you had the storm god of the city of Nerik, the storm god of Zibalanda, the storm god of the lightning, King Mutali II, the one who fought Ramses at the Battle of Kadesh. His personal patron was the storm god of the lightning.
It's like branding. It's specialization. You pick the specific version of the product that suits your needs.
Exactly. If you're a general heading into battle, you want the lightning god on your side. If you're a farmer, you might pray to the storm god of the gentle rain.
And what about his partner, the sun goddess of Arena? You mentioned she's the queen, the judge, but there's a twist with her too, right? She has a kind of night shift.
This is one of the most unique and fascinating aspects of Hittite theology. During the day, she is the celestial queen. She shines down. She sees everything. She judges the lands. But when the sun sets, she passes through the gates of the west and becomes Taknash Ishatu,
which means?
The sun goddess of the earth. But earth here means the underworld.
The sun of the underworld.
She lights up the land of the dead. This gave her a powerful chthonic aspect. She was the only major deity who could travel freely between the world of the living and the world of the dead, every single day.
She's the bridge between worlds.
She is the bridge. And because of that, she was the go-to deity for any kind of necromancy or interaction with the dead. If you needed to consult an ancestor or if you were being haunted by a ghost, you prayed to her. She knew the darkness just as well as she knew the light.
That gives her so much more depth than just being a generic shining light deity. No. But speaking of gods with depth, there is one god in the outline that sounds, frankly, a bit relatable. Telepinu, the vanishing god.
Ah, Telepinu. He is the god of agriculture and fertility, and his central myth is not about a great battle against a monster. It's about a temper tantrum.
Tell us what happens.
The myth begins with Telepinu becoming angry. We don't even know why. The beginning of the tablet is broken, which just adds to the mystery. But he is furious about something, and he doesn't destroy a city or throw lightning bolts. He just leaves.
He just walks out.
He gets so mad he puts his right shoe on his left foot and his left shoe on his right foot, a great symbol of cosmic disorder, and he stomps off into the wilderness and falls asleep in a meadow.
And what happens to the world when the god of agriculture takes a nap?
Total biological collapse. The text is very beautiful and poetic here. It says, "The mist sees the windows. The smoke sees the house. The logs in the fireplace wouldn't burn. But worse, all fertility just stops. The sheep rejects its lamb, the cow rejects its calf, barley doesn't grow. The gods themselves start to starve because humans have no crops to make offerings with.
So he passive-aggressively just shut down the entire biosphere?
Completely. And the other gods panic. The great storm god tries to find him but fails. He tries to smash down the door of Telepinu's house with his lightning, but of course he isn't there. The sun god sends a great eagle to search the world. Nothing.
So the big guns fail.
The big guns fail. Finally, the mother goddess, Hannah, has an idea. She says, send a bee.
A bee.
A tiny bee.
Oh.
The storm god actually mocks her. He says, I'm the mighty storm god and I couldn't find him. What is a tiny bee going to do? But the mother goddess insists. The bee flies out, it searches every flower in every meadow, and it finds Telepinu sleeping. And to wake him up, the bee stings him on his hands and feet.
Oh, if he was grumpy before.
Exactly. He wakes up in a rage, absolutely furious. He's even angrier than he was before. He starts destroying rivers and shattering houses. The cure was worse than the disease.
So how do they fix it? Brute force didn't work. The bee just made everything worse.
And this is the key insight into the Hittite mind. They fix it with magic. The goddess of magic, Kamrusepa, steps in. She performs a soothing ritual to draw out his anger. She doesn't fight him. She uses analogies. She recites poetry. She says things like, as this malt is sweet, so let Telepinu's soul be sweet, or let his anger flow away like water.
So they talk him down. They de-escalate the situation with a ritual.
They ritually purge the negative emotion from him. And once the anger is gone, Telepinu returns, fertility is restored, and life resumes. And this myth wasn't just a story they told around the campfire.
No.
It was a liturgical script. If there was a real-world drought or famine, the priests would go to the temple and recite this entire story, perform these exact rituals to magically coax the god back from his anger.
That connects the myth directly to real life. It's a survival manual. In case of biosphere collapse, break glass, read Telepinu myth.
Precisely. It shows that for the Hittites, the solution to cosmic problems wasn't always fight harder. Sometimes it was perform the right ritual to soothe the angry feelings.
Sometimes it was fight harder. Right. We absolutely have to talk about the heroes and the monsters, because the Hittites had their own version of St. George and the Dragon, didn't they?
They did. It's called the Illuyanka cycle. Illuyanka literally means something like eel snake or serpent, and it's a classic chaos camp. That's a German term mythologists use for the primordial struggle against chaos. The eternal battle between order, represented by the storm god, and chaos, the dragon.
But the Hittite version is messy. It's not a straightforward heroic tale.
It is so messy. There are two main versions that have survived, and neither of them makes the storm god look particularly competent on his own. In the first version, the storm god goes to fight the dragon, and he loses.
Not a great start for the King of Heaven?
No. He is soundly defeated, so he goes, humiliated, to the other gods for help. And his daughter, the goddess Nara, comes up with a plan. She decides that brute force isn't working, so she's going to use cunning. She throws a party, a huge feast.
It's a Trojan horse strategy, but with beer?
Basically.
Right.
She prepares vats and vats of wine, beer, and every kind of liquor. But she decides she needs some mortal muscle, so she goes and finds a human man named Hypasius.
Okay.
But Hypasius is a bit opportunistic. He says to the goddess, I will only help you if you sleep with me.
He propositions a goddess in the middle of an apocalypse. That seems like a surefire way to get turned into a toad.
It's a huge transgression of the divine-human boundary. But Inara is desperate, so she agrees. She sleeps with him, then hides him. The dragon Illuyanka and his children are lured to the feast. They drink all the booze till they can't even stand. They pass out drunk. Hypasius jumps out from his hiding place and ties them all up with a rope.
And then the storm god comes in.
Then the storm god comes in and kills the helpless, hungover dragon.
So the heroic victory involves a guy who extorted a goddess for sex, and the main strategy was getting the cosmic monster of chaos drunk.
It really emphasizes that the storm god isn't omnipotent. He needs female strategy from Inara, and he needs human help from Hypasius to win. It grounds the victory in cooperation, not just divine might.
What about the second version? You said there were two.
The second one is even darker. It's truly tragic. In this version, the dragon defeats the storm god and, to add insult to injury, rips out his heart and his eyes.
Ouch. So he's completely incapacitated.
He's crippled, blind, and heartless. He wanders the earth, and he comes up with a long-term revenge plan. He marries a mortal woman, the daughter of a poor man, and he fathers a son with her.
Right.
He raises this son with one singular purpose, to get his organs back. When the son grows up, the storm god arranges for him to marry the dragon, Illuyanka's daughter.
He infiltrates the dragon's family. It's a long con.
A very long con. As part of the marriage arrangement, the son asks his new father-in-law, the dragon, for a wedding gift. "Give me," he says, "the heart and eyes of that god you beat up all those years ago."
And the dragon just gives them to him.
The dragon, unsuspecting, agrees. The son takes the organs and gives them back to his father, the storm god.
And the storm god gets his groove back.
He is restored to his full power. He immediately goes to the sea to fight the dragon. But now, his own son is part of the dragon's household. The son is on the dragon's side. And when the battle begins, the son cries out to his father in the sky, "Kill me too. Take me along with him. Do not spare me."
He's torn between his duty to his father and his loyalty to his new family.
Exactly. So the storm god unleashes his power and kills the dragon. And he kills his own son along with it.
Wow. That is heavy. It's a victory, but it cost him his child. It's a tragedy.
It shows that maintaining cosmic order requires terrible sacrifice. It's not a clean win. The Hittites had a very sophisticated understanding that order is expensive.
Speaking of things that aren't clean wins, we have to talk about the stone monster. This is the sequel to the Kumarbi story, right? Kumarbi is still mad about losing the throne to Teshub.
Yes. Kumarbi wants his revenge.
Yeah.
So being Kumarbi, he decides to do something uniquely grotesque and weird. He goes down to the underworld and meets with a giant rock.
Of course he does. That's very on brand for him.
And out of this union comes Ulukumi, a monster made of diorite stone. And the text is very specific. Ulukumi's blind. He is deaf. He has no compassion. He is just a growing, mindless force of pure destruction.
He's a natural disaster given a physical form.
Precisely. Kumarbi places the stone child on the shoulder of a primordial giant named Upaluri. Now, Upaluri is an Atlas-like figure. He's an ancient being who stands in the sea and holds up the sky and the earth.
And Upaluri doesn't notice a giant rock monster growing on his shoulder.
No. In the myth, Upaluri is so fast and ancient and numb that he barely feels it. At one point, the other gods ask him about it. He just says, "My shoulder hurts a little. Is that a pinch?" Meanwhile, Ulukumi is growing 9,000 leagues tall. He towers over the mountains. He grows so tall, he blocks the gates of the storm god's city in the sky.
And Teshub tries to fight him.
Teshub gets his bulls. He gets his chariot. He throws his mightiest thunderbolts. And they just bounce off. It's diorite. It's one of the hardest stones on Earth. You can't electrocute a rock.
So Teshub is defeated. Again.
He's utterly defeated. The text says he actually abdicates the throne and sits in the dust, weeping.
So how do you stop a 9,000-league-tall, deaf, blind stone monster that's immune to all your weapons?
You can't use force. You need wisdom. The god Ea, who is the Mesopotamian god of wisdom the Hittites adopted, steps in. He realizes that Ulukumi is attached to Upaluri's shoulder. The monster is drawing his strength directly from the foundations of the earth itself.
So you have to cut the power cord.
Precisely. Ea goes down to the underworld, to the former gods. Remember the warehouse where they keep the old stuff? And he retrieves the copper cutter, the very same tool that was used to separate heaven and earth at the beginning of time.
Whoa.
He takes this ancient cosmic tool and he saws through Ulukumi's feet.
He cuts him off at the ankles.
Once severed from his connection to the earth, the monster weakens. He loses his invulnerability. And Teshub can finally come back and destroy him.
I love that. Brute force failed completely. You needed the ancient tool of creation, ancient wisdom, to solve the problem.
It's a beautiful theme. Strength must be tempered by ancient wisdom. And it also highlights that fear of the former gods again. The key to saving the present was stored with the dangerous past.
This all sounds incredibly dramatic, but what did it actually mean for the people on the ground? We've talked about gods and monsters, but what about the king? You said he was the pivot point. What was his day-to-day life like?
Honestly, a complete nightmare of scheduling. The king's life was dominated, and I mean dominated, by the cult calendar. If he missed a festival, the gods would get angry, and maybe the plague would come, or the hostile Casca tribes from the north would invade.
So no vacations for the Labarna?
Not really. Take the Antahsum festival in the spring. It was the Crocus Festival. It lasted for roughly 38 days. The king and queen had to travel in a grand procession to a dozen different holy cities, performing specific rituals, reenacting myths, making offerings. It was a month-long road trip of religious obligation.
And what if he's sick? Or has to lead an army?
If he's sick, the empire is in genuine danger. We have letters where the king apologizes profusely to a god for missing a ritual because he's ill, and you can feel the terror in the words. He's practically begging the gods not to hold it against the kingdom.
Wow. Now, the king handled the big state rituals. But what if I, a regular Hittite farmer, had a problem? What if I was sick, or my livestock were dying, or I was just having bad luck? I don't go to the king, do I?
No, you would go to the old women.
The old women.
The Hasawa. The word literally means something like she of birth or midwife, but they were basically wise women, experts in ritual magic. While men dominated the big stone temples and the state cults, these women controlled the practical, everyday magic that people relied on.
Give me an example of what a Hasawa would do.
Okay, so let's say you're suffering from impurity. In Hittite thought, impurity wasn't just a metaphor for sin. It was a physical substance, like magical dirt, that could stick to you and cause bad luck or illness.
Right.
The Hasawa would perform a ritual, like the famous ritual of Tenali, to scrub you clean.
And how does that work? What does she do?
She might build 2 small gates, one made of hawthorn, which was seen as a purifying wood, and one of oak. And you would have to walk through the gates. As you pass through, she would recite incantations to strip the evil off of you.
Like a spiritual car wash.
Exactly like a spiritual car wash. And often, they would use a scapegoat. They'd take a piglet or a goat or even just a lump of clay and wave it over your body while chanting. They would say, "This piglet is now you. The evil that was in you is now in the piglet."
And then what happens to the piglet?
And then they destroy the piglet, or they banish it into the wilderness.
Poor piglet.
It was a brutal world. But the logic was very consistent. Evil is matter. It's a substance. It cannot be destroyed, only moved. So you have to move it from the patient to something else, and then you get rid of that something else.
Moving on to the ultimate removal, death. What happened when a Hittite died? What was their view of the afterlife?
For the common person, the outlook was pretty bleak, to be honest. The soul, which they call the Akanten, went to the dark earth, and it was the dusty, gloomy, miserable place where the spirits murmured like doves. It's very similar to the Mesopotamian afterlife. You eat mud, you drink muddy water, and not a great vacation spot.
But the king, I assume, gets an upgrade.
The king gets the Indo-European VIP package. When king died, the text says he becomes a god. His soul doesn't go to the dark earth. It goes to a meadow, a welu. Think of it like the Greek Elysian fields, a beautiful green pasture where he can graze his flocks for eternity.
And the funeral itself, what did they do with the body?
Extremely elaborate. It was a 14-day ritual.
Yeah.
And crucially, they practiced cremation. This is a huge cultural marker that separates them from, say, the Egyptians who mummified bodies to keep them intact for the afterlife.
Like the heroes in the Iliad.
Exactly like the funeral of Patroclus in the Iliad. They would build a huge pyre, burn the body, then quench the fire with wine and beer. They'd collect the bones, dip them in fine oil, wrap them in linen, and place them in a special house of stone, which was a tomb, but also a kind of ancestral shrine.
It's all about transforming the physical body into a spiritual divine ancestor.
Precisely.
We've talked about creation, life, and death. What about the end of the world? Did the Hittites have a book of Revelation? A Ragnarok?
Not in the linear sense we think of it. They didn't seem to fear a single final judgment day coming at the end of time. They saw time as much more cyclical. But they lived in constant fear of micro-apocalypses.
Like the Telopinu situation you described earlier.
Exactly. The world is fragile. Cosmic order is constantly under siege. If the proper rituals fail, the gods get angry or just wander off, and nature collapses. That could happen next Tuesday if we aren't careful.
And there is that underlying fear of the former gods you mentioned.
That was the ultimate terror. That was their Ragnarok, in a way. The fear that the copper gates of the underworld would burst open, and Alu and the old primordial chaotic gods would surge back up to reclaim the throne from Teshub. The entire Hittite worldview was one of constant vigilance. You pray to 1,000 gods, not because you necessarily love all of them, but because you need every single one of them to hold the line against chaos.
That brings us to their symbols, because one of their most powerful symbols has survived long, long after the empire itself vanished. The double-headed eagle.
Yes. It's amazing. If you look at the flags of Russia or Serbia or the old Holy Roman Empire or the Austrian Empire, you see the double-headed eagle. That symbol comes directly from the Hittites.
Where do we first see it?
We find it carved on the Sphinx gates at Alakahuyuk, a major Hittite city. It's this powerful eagle with 2 heads grasping 2 hairs in its talons.
And what did it mean to them?
It's likely about total vigilance, looking east and west simultaneously, looking to the past and the future. It symbolizes the all-seeing power of the king or the god. It's a symbol of total dominion. And it's just incredible to think that a symbol carved 3,500 years ago in Anatolia is still used as a symbol of power by modern nations who probably have no idea where it actually came from.
And there's one more symbol I want to touch on, the kursa, the sacred hunting bag. You mentioned it earlier as a kind of vessel for a god. But there's a fascinating connection to a very famous Greek myth, right?
The Golden Fleece. This is one of my favorite connections. Think about the Greek myth of Jason and the Argonauts. What is the Golden Fleece?
It's a sacred ram skin hanging on a tree in a sacred grove, guarded by a dragon in a mysterious land to the east.
And what is the Hittite cursa? It's a sacred fleece or skin hung on a sacred aeon tree, often associated with powerful guardian deities.
It's the same thing.
Scholars are pretty much convinced that the Greek myth is a distorted memory of this real Hittite ritual object. The Argonauts were basically going on a quest to steal a Hittite cursa.
That just brings us full circle to the legacy of these people. They disappeared. Their cities were burned in the Bronze Age collapse around 1180 BC. They were forgotten for millennia. But in a way, they're still with us.
They are the bridge. That is their ultimate legacy. They sat at the geographical and cultural crossroads between the ancient wisdom of Mesopotamia and the emerging new world of the Asian in the West. They took the stories of the East, the succession of gods, the storm god fighting the chaos dragon, and they translated them into an Indo-European framework that the Greeks could understand.
Hesiod's theogony, the very foundation of Greek myth, is almost a cover version of the Hammurabi cycle.
It is. Without the Hittites acting as that cultural filter and transmitter, the Greek myths, as we know them, might look very, very different. And by extension, our own culture would look different. St. George killing the dragon is a faint echo of Tishu killing Ilyanka. The double-headed eagle on a flag is the Hittite royal seal. They are the missing link in the DNA of Western civilization.
It really makes you think about the human element here. These weren't just abstract statues and clay tablets. These were people living in a very dangerous world, surrounded by enemies, terrified that the sun might not come up or the rain might not fall.
And their response to that profound fear wasn't to narrow their world to become dogmatic. It was to expand it, to embrace the thousand gods. They saw the divine in everything, in the storm, in the sun, in a hunting bag, in the mountains, in the rivers. They tried to build a cosmic shield out of pure strategic inclusivity.
There's something kind of beautiful about that. In a world of total uncertainty, they didn't limit their options. They said, you know what? We need all the help we can get. So here is a final provocative thought for you listening at home. The Hittites spent their entire history, their entire civilization, trying to keep the former gods, the ghosts of the past, the primordial chaotic forces locked behind heavy copper gates in the underworld. They knew that if those gates opened, their current fragile order would fall apart.
It really raises the question, what are the former gods in our own lives? What are the old chaotic forces from our own past that we have locked away in the basement? And what rituals, what habits are we performing every single day just to keep those gates shut?
Something to mull over. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the ghost civilization of the Hittites, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We have plenty more lost worlds and forgotten mythologies to explore.
Until next time.
Stay curious.